Welcome to the Soar podcast, the place for creative entrepreneurs with limitless dreams and unconventional stories. I'm your host, Ray Hyde Cornell, founder and business mentor at Chiron Consulting and CEO and senior copywriter at Cornell Content Marketing. My goal is to bring you stories of what's possible so you can never tell yourself that your dreams are impossible. All right, so we have Matt Caskey on today, and I have been so excited for this interview. I actually alluded to this interview in episode 1 of the podcast when I mentioned my friend who has made a living spinning basketballs on wine bottles. And I'll let you elaborate more on that because there's much more to your skill set. But Matt, tell everybody what you do.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on. First off, I hope you didn't talk me up too much at this point. But just long story short, I'm just a basketball junkie. Been playing since I was 6 years old. Initially got started in a ball handling and just like use self-improvement group. So been doing basketball tricks, spinning them. You can think of me like a white Harlem Globetrotter. That's what
Yes.
I always tell people. It's just the easiest thing. But just doing basketball entertainment. So we would go around and perform at the halftime games of like the Spurs and the Longhorns, the Harlem Globetrotter games. So just a really neat experience. And through that organization, I was fortunate enough to go to Australia and do a two-week tour out there performing at the halftime games of their professional league. So that was a really awesome experience, something that I'll never forget. And then fast forward, sports, basketball has just always been my life. So played in college, played 4 years of college ball. And after I got out, after I graduated, just got fell into a government job. So I was a cost and price analyst for 10 years. Very, very good, very solid job. But some things happened just throughout the course of the years, and it just wasn't right for me. And so ultimately, I've been on this journey to quit the full-time job after 10 years to kind of pursue, this passion, and very much still struggling at it. It's always a work in progress, but yeah, just there, like I said, certain things happened, and I just realized what was most important in life to me. And I have met some amazing people, had some amazing experiences just through the people that I've met and networking, and really, like I said, just trying to make this thing work. So we'll go into those details, I'm sure, but that's kind of me in a nutshell right now, just trying to impact others and use basketball, my lifelong passion, to make it a career. So.
And I love that you said that you're trying to make this work, because I feel like so many of us who would consider ourselves entrepreneurs or self-employed or freelancers, you've kind of tried a little bit of everything, it seems. And I don't even know your whole story. I just know these little bits and pieces that I've gotten to, have a sneak peek on over the years. And we've even worked together. For example, we worked together at Montevibiano for a while. And it seems like, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but you were the guy who was kind of open to any opportunity and open to meeting anybody. And that seems to be your secret to making these kind of like wild and crazy dreams come true.
I think that's a fair assessment. I used to have this set plan, like how in my head I had the roadmap, or whatever you want to call it, as an entrepreneur, and I was always just trying to make that roadmap work. But I realized that through the course of that, it's not about, it's being able to be fluid. And I think with what I do, like the skill sets and the things that I do, it's really rare. There's not a lot of people that can do it. So, whenever I'm talking about this, like, this is my personal path, and you have to have a different, in my opinion, you have to have a different mindset if you're going into like a saturated market and you want to make it on your own. For me, it's kind of like I do entertainment stuff. I connect with people. I create experiences. So that's what I do. And in order to make that work, believe me, like in the beginning, it was just like you take all the wrong steps. or steps that I won't necessarily say wrong. It's just not the right time or whatever. And so I just started like realizing that whenever things happen or whenever they have happened for me, it's really just about how did I make this connection? And I go back into like, how did I actually meet this person that this opportunity came about from, you know? And then I go back and I'm like, damn, can we cuss or anything?
Yeah. This is a total adult language friendly zone. Don't worry.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Go into like getting kicked off the podcast.
No, you're good.
But I was just like, shit, like this is what has happened. I met this person. I go back to, 5 different, like the spider web of connections that how did this come about? And, you meet one person and who knows if it's the right timing for an opportunity for you, whatever path that you're on. Yeah. And so I have given up on I have an ultimate umbrella plan is what I like to call it. Like I want to make this work. I'm at the point where I'm like, and I'll explain it, but like a mobile basketball carnival. So the stuff that I have in place, I can literally go out and go to a setting and set up basketball entertainment games, and then me doing spin tricks and interacting with kids and working with nonprofit organizations and stuff like that. But it's an all-in-one type of thing that has built over the years. But I had never had this plan at the beginning. So I'm at the point where I'm like, if there's something, my whole thing is I add value to others. So if there's things that can come in my way that add value to what I do so that I can add more value to others, I'm open to anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Okay. Trying to figure out which direction I want to go in because there's so many things.
There's a lot of directions that come in.
One of the things you said was, you think back to how you've met people, and I think back to how you and I met, which was on the Shaper app.
Yeah.
Which, if anybody listening doesn't know what Shaper is, don't worry. It was a very fleeting networking app that was kind of like the functionality of Tinder, but with the intention and user group of LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. So it was like speed professional networking. Right. And of the dozens, if not hundreds of people that I swiped left or swiped right on and connected with on Shaper, you are the only person that I still talk to. And it's kind of like, like, woohoo, gold medal prize. It's kind of like, you never know when those right fit connections are going to come into your life. So for people listening and who are maybe weary of networking or, a little hesitant to try something like Shaper or something like Clubhouse or something like LinkedIn, what's your philosophy on networking and connections, and what advice would you give them?
Try everything. I mean, what fit for me might not fit for somebody else, and it probably won't, try everything. And if you don't like it, fuck it. Like, don't do it, just stop using it. But, and this more than, probably most people, just with connecting, most of the people that you connect with are not going to lead anywhere, like that's another thing too. I was like, oh man, this guy would be perfect for what I want to do. That's the mentality that I had at the beginning. And so it would always wind up being some type of pitch. Right. And I'm not good. Like, I'm not a salesman. Like when I say salesman, I'm like, I can't read a script. I was that network marketing whore, if you will. Like I would bounce around from, and don't get me wrong, I love network marketing. I love like the concept of it. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's taught right, but that's another conversation.
Right.
But it's, to me, that always made me seem is it inauthentic. You're the English major. So inauthentic or unauthentic? Okay. Inauthentic. All right. So it just made me feel like that was kind of just, this is not really me. And so the times that connections have worked out for me, it's just starting a conversation and then just seeing where that goes. Just being genuine, but however you do that. I love to go out and just meet people in person. I love to have people look at me whenever I'm spinning balls and then they're like, oh, that's really cool. And then it just gets going from there. Yeah. Or I love to see that. I mean, my main passion is working with the younger generation. So, these kids that can't spin a basketball or don't think they can, I'll get them to try a couple times and then I'll spin it on their finger and I'm like, oh, see, nothing's impossible. But then that gets me to talking to the parents, and you never know where those connections are going to go, you know? So
Yeah.
it's kind of like, if there's something that you're like, oh, you know, should I try this? I don't know if it'll work. Questioning yourself, screw it, go do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work out, then on to the next one. But I was really afraid of rejection. I was really, really timid whenever I first started networking with a purpose, I guess. I've always been a
Mm.
people person, but when there's something that ultimately you would like to address with somebody or bring up or see if it's a good opportunity, that gets tough because you can make yourself seem fake, you know? So I think just starting wherever you start, just start with a genuine hello
Mm.
or whatever, however you want to
Yeah.
intro, whatever works for you, whatever's comfortable for you, that doesn't make you seem fake. I think that would be the best advice I can give to anybody.
Yeah. And I mean, it happens to all of us, right? We go to network events or conferences, or even just being in Facebook groups, Reddit forums, wherever you might hang out. And this happens to me all the time on Facebook. I get someone, friend request me, and then they send me a DM and they're like, hey, so I just wanted to connect. And what do you do?
Hmm.
And then I tell them what I do, and I'm a little tentative because I kind of know where this is going.
Right.
And then they start trying to sell me term life insurance, or they want to be my new accountant, or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
But you always have that guard up when
Uh-huh.
you know someone's coming at you because they want something. Whereas what you're saying is approach it from the perspective of, what if we're just two people seeing if we have anything in common, seeing if there's any way we can help each other? How can I help you? If
Exactly.
you focus on how I can help you, there's no guard, there's no fakeness, there's no wall that's going to prevent it from going anywhere. You only have possibility. And eventually the day will come where that person returns the favor. And
Yeah.
it's purely because you had a genuine connection based on helping each other, as opposed to, hey, let me sell you some shit that you don't need.
That's 100% correct. And yeah, you say that, and it's funny. I started watching all kinds of like new shows and stuff. I've gone through all of my series, and so I've been recycling. But I started watching for the first time New Amsterdam. And anyway, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but
I haven't.
the head of the medical hospital or whatever comes in, and to your point, he's going to everybody, every department, and the first thing he's always saying is, "How can I help you?" You know. And so if you go in it with that type of mindset, with really no agenda, I mean, you can have it in the back of your mind and stuff like that, but just people generally want to help people that seem like they care. So start off with having a real interest in the person that you're having a conversation with. Like if you're not really interested in them and what's important to them, then fuck it, you're probably already done anyway.
Yeah.
So you have to, that has to be genuine. However you go about it, you have to actually care about who you're talking to and what's important to them. Because I guarantee you, once you break that like wall of trust that they have, then anything's possible from there. But
Yeah.
that's the hardest part, is just you have to have somebody that trusts you. I mean, think about it yourself. Just put yourself in their situation, and somebody's always coming up to you, soliciting and asking you, hey, get involved with this, or how can this benefit? And that's all you're thinking about, is how is this going to benefit them? And that's most of the conversations that you're going to have. I mean, that's just sad. I feel like people don't really know how to communicate like in general these
Yeah.
days in person. But you know, just have a general interest in who you're talking to. I think that would be my best advice.
Yeah. Yeah. Another kind of layer of networking, and you and I do this for each other all the time, where I'm talking to a client or I'm talking to someone that I met recently, and I'm like, man, I feel like he and Matt would really hit it off. I don't know why, but I have no idea what could happen, but I'm just going to throw them in an email together and see what happens. What's been your experience with that? Is that kind of, do you feel like that's a waste of time, or do you feel like,
hell no. No, not at all. That's the most value that you can give anybody and that you can receive. Because first off, it puts me in like an area of trust already coming from you, because they trust you, you know. So I know that you're not going to vouch for somebody that, and you're not, and the people that like your close associates and everything, they're not the type of people that like they don't have time to have shitty, references. And so whenever you do take the time to actually put your name out there and put your name behind somebody that you're referring, then that takes a lot. And like whoever you're introducing me to, whoever I've introduced you to, they already know. I don't even have to worry about it. So, that's the most valuable thing I think you can do for anybody. And, to your point, we were just talking about, Michael, the guy that I introduced you to, great guy. But I mean, nothing in it for me. I don't care. Like, that's another thing too, is that at the beginning, I did this. I was like, man, if I'm going to introduce somebody, like in the back of my mind, how can I benefit from this as well? I think you need to stop that. Like, to me, just do it because you care. It's going to come back at some point, So I don't mean to be all like Tony Robbins, like pay it forward and everything, but I mean, it really is just the truth in my experience. That's what's happened. And some things
Yeah.
some things have come from it, some things haven't, but they've all been solid people. Like I am still friends with everybody that you've introduced me to, even if there's no business that comes out of it,
Yeah. Yeah. So along those same lines, what's your take on referral fees? Like perfect example, Mike, you introduced me to your buddy, Mike. Mike and I are now working together through my marketing agency. What's your take on referral fees? Do you feel like, hey, there should always be some sort of compensation, or like, what's your whole philosophy on that?
I think every situation's different, and I know that's the direct answer that you definitely wanted. But
Right.
like, look, y'all do y'all's thing. I mean, if I want to see, I want to see you succeed. I want to see Mike succeed. I'll be working with Mike on stuff, so obviously, I mean, yeah, I guess there's that benefit of you helping him succeed. I mean, and for certain projects, whatever. But
Yeah.
even if we didn't work together, it's kind of like, uh, I mean, unless you're making $1 million deals, then yeah, I'm gonna be like, hey,
Yeah.
little kickback here.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it's just you're helping him start, you're helping him grow, and I don't. It's just me and my personality. If you feel like you need referral fees, and if that's what makes you comfortable doing it, then do it. Just make sure you're upfront about it. So I can't say no, I can't say yes. I mean, it's just a matter of your mindset. Me,
Yeah.
for the most part, I'm not looking for anything. And I know that if something does blow up anyway, that I'm going to be taken care of by my close people anyway. And if not, hey, like, on to like what good? I mean, what does it hurt? I mean,
Right.
so to me, I don't really look for it a lot. But again, it's like if you feel like that makes you more comfortable and more willing to do it, then just be upfront about it, and if you're expecting something, make sure you're not coming back later and being like, oh, hey, you remember whenever I, introduced, yeah, let's have some back. So
Right.
I think that's important. If you are going to expect referral fees and stuff like that, make it clear up front. And that way that can really cause friction between relationships. And you never want that,
Yeah.
never want to have bad blood just because something wasn't conveyed up front.
Totally. And I've had those relationships with other businesses or other entrepreneurs where it's like, hey, you want to be referral partners? Here's what my referral fee structure looks like. And as long as you're open and upfront about it in the beginning, I think those relationships can still be very mutually beneficial. But you're right. It's when it's like, hey, I referred that person to you 3 months ago. Like, where's my check?
Mm-hmm.
And you never talked about it, you never agreed on it,
Yeah.
and you're kind of looking for a handout or a payout.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you can really ruin some relationships. And then you're also burning that bridge to all the potential future connections you could have had with both of those people.
Yeah, and and this is I hate to talk about money. Like, I'll just be honest with you. I don't like to talk about it at all.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing for an entrepreneur. But what I will say is that it's, as much as it's still uncomfortable for me, and for most people, especially starting out, you've got to do it though.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't take that risk of, just because it feels uncomfortable, to bring up, payment structure or referral fees or however you want to do it. You need to do that. And the other party will respect you more, honestly, if you come back later. And even if you don't, and then you start holding these self grudges that the other person never really knows about. There's just no benefit to not having everything out there from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about something else that you mentioned earlier, which is timing. When we were talking before we started recording, when you were telling me about the ventures that you have going on, there's always kind of this, I have no idea when this is all going to come together vibe in the entrepreneurial world, especially when it comes to networking. You know, I have people who I've been following up with them for 2 or 3 years via email, and then suddenly they become a client and they're like a dream client. But you never really know if and when those things are going to come through. You just have to be persistent, stay in touch, stay in communication. And so, especially because you said, you know, you've been trying to make this happen. And now, especially the, you know, in the unlikeliness of COVID, it's all starting to come together now. Things are starting to pull together in the way that you had envisioned. So, what's your take on timing, patience, all of that as it relates to networking as an entrepreneur?
Get ready to get pissed off. Get ready to have this be a mental battle, because that more than anything, timing is the most important aspect of this. I'll just give you an example for the big project that I'm working on right now. So 2 years ago, I was going to do some entertainment for a friend of mine in Australia for basketball camp. And he was good friends with the Mr. Olympia, the fitness and bodybuilding that, the organization that made Arnold Schwarzenegger famous. So the biggest fitness event in the world a couple of years ago, I was going to be basketball operations and putting on a 3-on-3 tournament in Vegas for their big show. Well, COVID hit, everything got canceled. And so I was really bummed about that. I mean, there's, 35, 40 million viewers, tens of thousands of people going through the expos, great marketing, like great, awesome, opportunity. So they didn't have it for 2 years in person. And I was just like, shit, like this really, really sucked. And I was just bummed. I was pissed off about it, and just fast forward, next month, they're going to hold it in Orlando, got back onto doing the basketball operations. But this time I've had 2 years of kind of building my brand and building what I want to have this, come together as. And now I have multiple tools that are going to make this experience so much better than if I would have done it in Las Vegas. And so I think about that. And that was 2 years ago, right? And if I would have done it in Vegas the first time, and let's say I didn't put on a good show, and they might not have wanted me back as the operations guy, but I can guarantee you now, everything that I have and that I'm putting together is going to be a phenomenal experience. And so I'm grateful that it didn't happen a couple of years ago. I've got just special things that nobody else has that I'm bringing to this huge event that's going to get the spotlight on not only what I'm doing, but some really awesome nonprofit organizations and being able to get their message out, to the millions and millions, when I didn't have a couple of those connections a couple of years ago, but I have over the years. And now this is an awesome opportunity to get their message out. So I'm thankful. I'm so much more thankful that it did get canceled a couple of years ago. And now I can really do it, so much better now. So you don't see it. Hindsight's 2020, that lame, but it's true. Like you look back and I wouldn't have wanted to do it 2 years ago, knowing what I know now. So I think just keeping a solid head on your shoulder and just realizing, take it how it comes and keep your ultimate goal in mind, but just realize you got to be flexible. You got to be fluid. And look, I still get my feelings all the time. I still, I still act like a little bitch sometimes when I'm complaining about like shit that doesn't matter, at the time, because it's not.
We all do.
I know it's not going to be, but accept that too. Like you can't always be like, okay, well, let's just be positive about everything. Like that's not realistic. You need to get pissed off sometimes, but don't let it linger. Just realize, all right, this shit didn't work out, so let's take this other step and continue what I really want to do. Yeah.
You can still be bummed out or pissed off about something And at the same time, you can still trust that whatever reason this is happening for, it's happening for a reason. And I just need to trust that it's going to be better on the other side of this. I'm still really pissed off right now, but that's also good information for you to tell you this is something you actually care about.
Yeah.
This isn't just something that you were just dabbling in or trying. This is actually the right path that you're meant to be on. So it's good that you're getting all riled up about it.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think that's really important. I mean, if you're not getting upset about it, then you probably need to look into something else, you know? And I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy to experience all the emotions that you have and all the reactions that you have. And then at some point, you know, just be like, all right, what do we do now? Like, that's extremely important, and something that you're not going to do at first. I guarantee you, there's such, and you can listen to all the, and believe me, I did it all the time. I did it all the time.
That was amazing. That just popped into the
really
frame.
all over the place. It's ridiculous. But that's something. Shit. What were we even talking about? Right? Yeah, she does that.
My dog does the same thing to me. Timing and just
experiences emotions, and then I think the biggest thing is learn from it. Like, this is what I'm talking about. If you can listen to all the motivational speakers that you want, for the most part, it's the same information coming from a different voice in, you know, a different environment, and honestly, a different time in your life. So I can sit here, and what got me initially motivated to have the courage to jump out there and quit my job, all of those people that I listened to, you know, Gary Vee and Mike Simonek or whatever his name is.
Simon Sinek.
Simon Sinek, yeah.
Yes.
Love him, love that guy. I'm blanking right now, but all of these inspirational speakers, like that's what got me going, you know. And I was like, shit, that gives you hope that that for me personally, that I could do it, or that, you know, I need to do it. But right now, like I don't need that right now. You know, I know that like that doesn't motivate me right now. And it's just, it can be the same video, it can be the same words, but the timing in your life, it affects you differently, you know? So, I mean, you've got to accept that timing is the most like crucial part, because it's not just timing for you, it's also timing for who you're talking to, and you don't know what's going on in their life. And you can have the same conversation, like you said, you start emailing somebody and then 2 years later, nothing's really changed, but circumstances in their life have, and now the timing's right, and you'll realize that, okay, now that both of y'all are on board and have the same mindset, that's when things really work. You don't want to be convincing people to do business with you if they really aren't in it in their heart.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I always try to teach the freelancers that I work with one-on-one in terms of the sales process. You don't have to convince anybody of anything. All you have to do is talk about what you do, talk about why you're different, talk about what's going to help them, give them some recommendations, and leave it at that. If they're feeling you, if they're feeling what you do in your services, it's going to work out. But when you come at them with the hard sell and you're trying to close them on the spot over the phone, that's when you kind of get people's guards up and it ends up falling apart. Yeah.
And so, and I think this is important too, because, you know, the only frame of reference I have is what I'm trying to do myself. And so I think I would like to ask you this actually, because again, what I do is not something that you just place an ad out in the paper and like, I mean, it's
we're going to talk more about that, by the way.
I'm not like, I'm trying to keep it very humble, but there's just not a lot of people. It's a weird talent that I have, that I've worked on all my life. But let's just say, I mean, for you, like as a copywriter, as what all your company does, I mean, it's more likely that there's going to be more people that provide the services that you provide.
Oh yeah.
So how do you, for me, it's just like, I can just go show somebody a picture of me spinning 6 basketballs or working with kids and stuff. And that's my pitch. I'm just like, look, this is what I do. But you know, for you, with so many other people doing what you're doing, you have so much more competition. How do you go about that? Because my approach, if I'm like, oh, okay, just go show somebody a picture of your logo, like that doesn't work. It doesn't have the same effect
Right.
for what they're trying to do on their path. So it's a again, whatever works at the end of the day, but how do you separate yourself with more competition out there for your services?
So I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to keep it brief because this is an interview for you. But for me, and I think this is important, especially for people who, as you said before, you know, there are some people who are in very saturated industries. Marketing, God, it must be one of the most saturated industries, especially in the freelance world. Everybody's either a designer, a social media manager, or a copywriter, a content creator. All are in the marketing industry, even a photographer, web developer. It's all in marketing. So yeah, how do you set yourself apart from all of these people? For me, what always sets me apart is when I start talking about my background and how I got into being a copywriter, even though it's funny because you actually said earlier that I'm the English major. I don't have an English degree. All of my degrees are in psychology and criminology. And as soon as I say that, as soon as I tell people that my background is actually in psychology, criminology, the study of human behavior, boom, I am instantly different than every single marketer out there. They know that I get people. I understand the way that the human mind works, the way that emotions drive decision making. And so what I always like to tell people is don't think that your background, no matter how seemingly irrelevant from what you now do, is actually going to hold you back. I've had people that I've worked with who were once nurses who are now photographers, teachers who are now graphic designers. And I guarantee you, every single one of them talking about their previously unrelated professional history is actually a huge asset to landing the clients that they want now and setting them apart in that really saturated industry.
Yeah, I think, and I'll just piggyback off of that. What you said is really, really important. Is you have something that you know sets yourself apart. Find something and like you figure it out. Whatever you're doing, whatever industry it is, figure out how you're doing it different. If you are in a saturated market, and if you're not, you better figure it out. You better figure out something, because if you're just given the same spiel as everyone else, then it's gonna be a much harder road. So either figure out what you do that's different or work on something that is different than anybody else can give you, because adding extra value that they don't hear about from everyone else, I feel like that's whenever you'll start getting clients and you'll be able to start making it work. But if you don't have that, it's going to be tough.
Totally. And, oftentimes we don't know what it is that sets us apart. I didn't know it was good. I hid my psychology background for a really long time. And I was actually really bitter about like, oh, fuck, like I got these 3 degrees. I have student loan debt. Like this fucking sucks. All I want to do is be a writer. All I want to do is, keep running with this business. But I feel this guilt for leaving the mental health world. And it wasn't until I was just like, fuck it. I'm just going to be honest with people when they say like, because everyone asks, so how did you get into this? How did you become a copywriter? Well, actually, it was my side hustle while I was putting myself through undergrad and grad school and yada, yada, yada. I didn't know that that's what was going to set me apart until I just started telling the truth. And so usually that's how it goes. You just have to start talking about your background and the things that you think are irrelevant or boring or, oh, everyone says that. Actually, the way you say it might hit someone differently. And then you finally found your thing because people's ears perk up.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, you can say the same thing, but it hits people's ears in different ways and affects them differently. So I think that's very important to keep that in mind with anything you're doing as far as like networking goes.
So now you're in the opposite situation. If marketers are in a saturated industry, you can call the entertainment industry saturated, but there is literally no one else who does what you do.
Yeah.
And so, you're like, I just got to admit it. Yeah. So how did you, first of all, how did you find the courage to decide that this thing that I've never seen anyone else do is going to be my thing in life? I am going to make a name for myself. I'm going to make an impact on the world. I'm going to inspire some kids. I'm going to get to do amazing things, go to amazing events, travel around the world because I spin basketballs.
Yeah, so I want to disclaimer here. I don't want you building me up too much here. There are many other people that spin basketballs and do entertainment. The package that I have put together as far as having the entertainment on the side of it as well, and really like that being my brand and not just spinning basketballs, but having other services that nobody else really does that.
Yeah.
So I think the courage part was I was just getting so sick of my job, and it was just really weighing on me because it once you find out what your passion is, I don't care what it is, and you really realize that, and who knows when that's going to occur, then everything else changes. And so I didn't really like love my job or like my job, to be honest with you, anyway, before I really realized what my passion was. And there's a specific incident that, made me change my mind about that. But then it's like, man, now it's not just like I don't like my job. Now you're just miserable. And there's nothing that can change that. So for me, that was the starting point. It ultimately, and that went on for a couple of years, to be honest with you. And it really, there was a point where I had to make a decision. It was year end, and I was one of the, there was only like 10 people in the country at my cost and price job that did what I did. So I was really important whenever it came to like doing $100 million contracts and having to look over those and analyze those. And at year end, just can't take vacation, anything like that. Well, I've gotten involved with a nonprofit organization that had an exchange program. And so with Kosovo. So in a few months earlier, they had a basketball camp that I'm involved with in San Antonio. So there's 20 Kosovo kids and coaches that came over here and basically just had the camp, hung out in San Antonio, just got to experience American culture. And then the reciprocal side of that is they bring 20 Americans over to Kosovo. We do the same thing. And so that trip was going to be, and these are like once in a lifetime type of opportunities that come around. And I had already been to 3 or 4 different countries, putting on basketball camps and just experiencing other cultures. So I realized how important that was and how impactful that all of those trips have been to me. And those are the memories that I'm never going to forget. So with this Kosovo trip, it was right during year end, and I just had to make a decision because I was going to get fired, if I took 10 days off during the busiest time of the year. So I just said, fuck it. I went through all the right channels and everything. I just didn't quit, but I went to Kosovo for 2 weeks. And after that, that was the end of my full-time job. And I had some stuff lined up for actually the golf event world. But as soon as the season was about to start, COVID hit, the NBA canceled their season. And within 4 days, my entire income, from 16 different tournaments got canceled. And so I didn't have jack shit going on, but that was the point where it was just like, it came down to make or break. I mean, you have to make this decision. You're right on the edge. And it was just like, that was what made me leap, because I didn't have a choice. Either I was going to resent the fact and regret the fact that I never went to Kosovo. And I knew I would regret that my entire life if I just said no, because this was more convenient. And so I made the decision right there. And, here we are, hills and valleys and all kinds of different situations have come up since COVID started. But here we are today.
And the last question I'll ask you, uncertainty, instability, that is one of the most common and most debilitating fears that I hear from freelancers and people in the entrepreneurial world. And yet it sounds like what you're saying is, for you, it was scarier to not follow your passion. It was scarier to stay in a job that made you miserable. And so how did you get through that? And also, how did you survive COVID shutting down the entertainment industry, shutting down the travel industry? How did you actually get through all that? And what advice would you give people going through something similar?
Look, I had retirement built up, and I never planned on using that, but shit, I went through that. I mean, I survived off of retirement. I survived off of the the government give me assistance through with the pandemic support and everything. So look, I got no shame. Like I'm completely broke, and so for me, that's hard to talk about, but it is what it is. And I think that's the reality of the situation, is that you might be in that situation. I had never been in a working situation where I had to rely on making I did all of the stuff all the working with organizations and going out and doing events while I had my full-time job. I did everything pro bono, but that was not a problem. Like I loved doing it, but then you get to the point where, okay, now I don't have that stability. And now I'm like, oh shit, now I can't just go do this for free, So, I mean, I lived off of I was thankful and I was lucky that I had some stuff saved up, and but it's really tough. And I think that's a reality that you need to, realize that's going to happen. It should never deter you from, in my opinion, should never deter you from going for what you want, because at the end of the day, you'll be put in a corner. If you are, then you either do something about it or you don't. But it just seems like every time that situation has come up to where I'm like, God, man, what am I going to do next month? Like for real. Just something's come up, as long as you just stick with it. And I can't explain it, but there's no secret, there's no rhyme or reason for it. But something has always come up in a dire situation. And I'm just like, thank you,
Yeah.
But again, it's like, I'm not gonna sit here and tell everybody it's gonna be easy. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, okay, here's a way that you don't fail, that you can give yourself comfort, like on the financial side and making this leap, because there's nothing, it's just, you have to, if this is truly what you're passionate about, is truly what you want, you will make it work.
Yeah. And I feel like everyone I know who I would consider a very successful entrepreneur, they've gone through that phase. Shayna Robinson, who's actually our episode 2 guest, she calls it your desert season. And she said in her interview, and I'll tell you right now, I went through the same thing, where I was doing blog posts for car dealerships at $25 a pop. I was writing 16 hours a day, horrible carpal tunnel, and just barely eking by to pay rent. I went through that phase too. And every single person I know who's gone through that, to use Shayna's words, desert season, they've come through it so grateful that they went through it, and so grateful that they did not return to traditional employment, that they stuck with what they wanted. And they almost had to be put in this impossible test. It's almost like the universe is saying, do you really want this? Do you really want to be a freelance writer? Do you really want to be a basketball entertainer? Are you sure? Because I'm going to take everything away from you. And if you still want it, then I'll give you everything that you've been wanting.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. And it's just, I compare I tell my kids this all the time. I'm like, look, if you pull up my Instagram, I consider that, it looks pretty cool, but
it does.
But what you don't see is the thousands and thousands of hours of practice that it took to get there. You only see the end product, and it's so much more prevalent these days with social media and just technology. But that comparison, I think, is spot on with business as well. I mean, you see successful business people and you only see, shit, they're a millionaire. And then you're like, though they had to have gotten lucky. That happened overnight. But talk to anybody. The grind is real. The struggle is real, and it's gonna be real. And anybody that is successful, if you really talk to them, let them tell you about the bad times. And I won't say bad times, but struggling times.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot more of those than there are of what you look at as quote unquote successful times.
Yep. Perfectly said. Well, Matt, where can people check you out online?
Most of my stuff is on Instagram. It's the handle Hoop to Inspire, HOOP, the number 2, Inspire. That's where I put most of my stuff. I will be putting up some other pages for the Olympia event and the Hooping with Heroes, which is going to be centered around putting on basketball events that show appreciation to police, firefighters, first responders, and armed services. So that's going to be a really cool deal. I have some information on that by the time this thing this thing airs.
Yeah,
But
we'll put that in the show notes.
yeah, those are the two main. Instagram is probably the best way to kind of see what's going on with my life and what all I have going on, because there's a lot. I'm sure there'll be a lot of a lot of other stuff here in the next couple months as well.
Oh yeah, it's just ramping up for you right now.
Yeah. Well, it's been
Awesome.
a grind, a struggle, but I can say that, it's great that things are, coming full circle now, but embrace all those struggling times. You'll look back and realize there's so much more that you learn from it, and that it's so much more important that those things happen to get you like where you are right now. So that's my very unprofessional and unprofessional advice for anybody out there who's trying to make this thing happen. Just enjoy it. Don't get too caught up on the highs. Don't get too caught up on the lows, and just remember where you want to go, and just be flexible and take what comes to you.
And on that perfect note, thanks so much for being here, Matt.
Thanks so much.
Hey, it's Ray again. Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, please subscribe and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, YouTube, and more. And want to be a guest on the show or know someone who has an amazing story of entrepreneurship? Apply on our website at www.chironconsulting.us/podcast.